Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to week 5 commentary. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce to you the concepts in topic 5. And again, we're going to cover, what to focus on to study in topic 5. And again, as my instructions were, take a look at where titles are highlighted, and especially if titles are highlighted and there's bolded lettering and sentences below that highlighting, it's even more important to focus on those areas. And then take a look at where you see these gold keys, and also take a look at where I gave some pointers around what to focus on. And again, the approach is you have the slide deck that's in each topic, and you look at that slide deck as you're looking at my week commentary presentation. And the week commentary presentation doesn't follow the order of those slides. Basically, it's a little bit random, so that you should take a look at what to focus on and then go back and forth. And then from there, if you don't quite understand that, please have a listen and view to the videos that are in that topic, because the concepts are focused on by Professor Powers. And then if you still have any kind of misunderstanding or whatever, and you want more clarification, then you go to the e-text. And the guideline for the e-text is in the course outline. And there's one page in the course outline that shows each topic, and then it shows the appropriate chapters to consult in or read to be able to get more clarification on the topics themselves. So that's how we're doing that. And so they're going to cover things on what to focus on. And then I'm also going to focus more on the participation activities, because again, I'll remind you, especially the group activities, they are building blocks for the assignments. So participation activity 5A and 5B, which are group participation activities, want your team to come together and look at those and understand that that's going to be building blocks for the cupcake assignment in topic 5. And I'll get into more detail as I show you more slides. But I'm going to start with the participation topic 5A. And what to consider is, you see where this little gold arrow is. Right here, we have including direct labor components. And what I want you to understand is that go to the cupcake assignment, and you're going to be asked in further questions to calculate a cost of goods sold and percentage cost of goods. And that's all related to direct labor. And so I'm going to elaborate on that. And what I found in the past is that there's really two ways of calculating cost of goods sold. One is if you're just a reseller, a retailer, so there's no direct labor included. And the other one is if you're a manufacturer. And so that I want you to make that connection, that you need to look at the cost of goods sold for a manufacturer to be able to be consistent, because you need one answer that to figure out the answer of the next question. And if you get the first part wrong, you get them all wrong. So I just wanted to make that clear. So here's what I'd like you to do is that, first of all, before you get a chance to start participation topics 5A and 5B, take a look at this link. It'll take you right to Professor Powers' video on productivity. And she goes through the calculation. So it's about an 18-minute video, but it's worth, it's worth the benefits that you'll get out of it to be able to do these participation activities well, and to actually do better on your team cupcake assignment. Right. The second thing is, now here's the link to the cupcake assignment. Pull it out and have a look at how relevant topics 5A and 5B are to be able to give you the leg up on answering the questions in the cupcake assignment itself. So normally what we would do is, we get you to do a full-blown, assembly of a gingerbread house, and that way then you'd have this direct connection to what you're doing, and then you'd have to do productivity analysis on that. But what I'm doing, I'm getting to the quick, and I'm going to tell you what the parameters are. So you've built this, and what you've done is, first of all, you've consulted with your customers, and you've decided to charge $3 for your gingerbread house that I'm requesting you to do productivity stuff in 5B, or productivity analysis. And the reason why is they're price conscious and they're looking for a very basic type of ginger house. All you're going to need to know about, what the inputs are in terms of materials is that you're looking at 3-gram wafer crackers at a cost of 10 cents each, and a jujube at a cent each. And then it'll only take one worker to build this gingerbread house. It'll take them 2 minutes of labor time at a labor rate of 33 cents a minute. So those are the parameters that you're going to use to figure out what 5B is all about. And then you're going to answer these questions. Identify the transformation that you're addressing when you're building and selling this gingerbread house. And this diagram comes right out of the slide deck, out of topic 5, and you're going to tell me which transformation it is. This is the list of transformations, so you could find it out of here and go ahead and answer that question inside of 5B. But again, I want to take you back to what we covered in topic 4, and I kept on telling you that that form follows function. And this chapter, topic 5, is all about operations management, and that's the function, operations management. And the link really is that we're going to use management principles to be able to improve on operations. Because you're wondering, well, why are we doing production operations in a management principles course? Well, it's to show you the connection. And just remember, form follows function, like I said. So, you're going to use these operations concepts, these functions, and it relates to, well, what are you building? Why are you building it? How are you building it? And in most cases, when are you building it? Because, that's a different step in the process that you need to understand. And then the form comes from, well, you need a structure for your organization. And from the structure, you have a layout. These are all, layers of the onion of form that gets you right down to, what gets measured gets done to have form. But the whole idea, again, around, form is to drive behaviors, doing the right things right, making sure that your employees have the right behaviors to achieve the goals that align, with the overall vision and mission of the organization. That's what it's all about. So I just want to elaborate a little bit on operations, just to show you all those connections. So these functions of operations, they're right here in the middle of the onion, right? But how crucial they are, forecasting, that'll make or break an organization. If you over forecast and you've got all this inventory that's tied up in capital, working capital, and you're not making any profit because you only sold a little bit of what you thought you were going to sell. Vice versa, if you stock out, if you under forecast, it means your customers are probably going to go somewhere else. And if they go somewhere else, sometimes they just don't come back, right? Capacity planning, well, that's all about getting your unit cost of production or unit cost of your offering down to the best possible level so that you could make better profit and you could please your customers, and you have more competitive advantage over your competitors because you could sell something of greater value at a lesser price. So that all comes into play. Scheduling, marketing, timing is everything. And that includes customer satisfaction. There's nothing worse for a customer that's expecting a product on a given date that the supplier said that they were going to send, and it's late, right? Because that's putting them back on what they're trying to do with that product or service. Managing inventory, I think I've covered this many times. It could be up to 35 to 65% of your overall cost in your working capital. That means that money could be going to shareholders. That money could be going to building or expanding your operation. It could be going to improving your processes so that you need great management techniques in management principles that are related to the operation that you have that can improve things. quality assurance is all about keeping customer satisfaction. And if you wow your customers while they're satisfied, then that turns into customer loyalty. And I'll talk about that in the service profit chain in the next few slides. Employee motivation and training. Well, we've learned a lot about behavioral management and the efforts that have come out of the evolution of management principles or management theories. So, that's a big part of improving the functions of operation management. And then location of facilities. Well, it's not rocket science. If you're closer to your customers, well, then it'll cost less to provide them the products or services, and you'll be much more responsive. So it adds to your success in terms of maintaining and sustaining competitive advantage. And then also facilities layout. Well, we talked a lot about that, but it's all at the end of the day about gaining more efficiency and effectiveness, doing the right things right. So those are all the aspects around the functions, just so you get the connection that, if you're going to use more effective management techniques, if you're going to be more involved in the management theories to utilize, well, then you're going to have a lot more leverage in being more successful. So that's the whole connection. So let me talk about the service profit chain. And it's pretty simple. It establishes a relationship between profitability, customer loyalty, customer satisfaction. You can take, is sort of table stakes in the game. That's, if you don't meet customer satisfaction, you're not even going to get, it's a non-starter. But if you wow your customers, customer loyalty, you can take that to the bank. And how is that driven in the service profit chain? Well, it's driven by satisfied employees that are much more loyal and more productive. And the whole idea then is that committed employees convey their satisfaction to the customer, and hence the chain of service profit is set in motion. So let me show you two circles here, right? So what happens is if you've got great external service quality, it promotes a lot of customer satisfaction. But if you meet and satisfy them, well, then they become customer loyal. And what do? Well, they become your advocates. They will not only stay with you and buy more from you, but they'll take their friends, they'll take their family. So they're advocates of your product. And then what happens is your business grows. So let's just take a look on the employee side. So you take some of your resources and you put it into your employees to train them better, to make them feel better, to help them do their job better, help them understand, why they're there and make them feel part of a shared vision. Well, what happens is that increases your internal service quality. And in there, and in my previous experience, I did a lot of work in service business process improvements, and we introduced the concept of internal customer. So internal customer and internal supplier, and it's no different than external customer because the internal supplier, has a commitment to the internal customer, and vice versa. And there's a service level agreement between them. And if you can improve that service level agreement, well, then you've improved your internal service quality, right? And what does that result in? It results in employees feeling more fulfilled, more satisfied. And then if they're more fulfilled and more satisfied, and they feel like they're a part of the shared vision, they become loyal employees, and they look after, they've got the corporation's back, the organization's back, and that results in improved employee productivity. So again, the improved employee productivity and the disposition of the customer impacts external service quality, which goes all the way around to increase the business growth. And then what happens? You got more money to be able to put back into the employees, to run this side of the equation, which means that, this service profit chain, a blueprint for loyalty really is a blueprint for sustainable competitive advantage and overall organizational or company success. So I wanted to introduce that to you because that's really, the underpinning, for these operational functions that you're trying to use your management techniques to be able to leverage to greater things. Now I want to just talk about goods and services, just because there's a distinction. So goods are tangible. They have a physical form. They can be stored in inventory. The ownership is transferred. So I go to Canadian Tire, I buy a pipe wrench. So the ownership of the pipe wrench is transferred to me, all right? And it could be produced by anybody around the world. And the thing is, say if I order something I order that pipe wrench on Amazon, well then I know that if there's a little bit of a delay, I know there's probably some logistics. I don't seem to mind that much, right? And the thing is, the quality can be measured instantly. As soon as I get that pipe wrench in my hand, I know by the feel and how functional it is, and if it's not slipping on pipe, it's a good quality piece, and there's no obvious wear and tear. So on the goods, it's very, very tangible. But look at the service side. So what's a service? Well, let's just talk about maybe landscaping, right? So a customer calls up a landscaper and wants their backyard landscaped, but they're not quite sure what that should look like. And the landscaper service provider is not quite sure, what the customer wants. So right there and then, it's an intangible. And the thing is that they'll agree on what will get done, and a price will be negotiated. And then what happens is there's always some unforeseen items that cannot be anticipated in an intangible service. So that might affect the costs or whatever. So it's upon the service provider to be able to manage the customer's expectation, all right? So that at the end of the day, it's a collaborated effort between the service provider and the customer. And if it's managed properly, then the customer understands, what conditions the service provider had to go through, and the customer is a lot more apt to be, satisfied with that customer, with that service, and satisfied to the point where they perceive that as a good landscaping service to them, right? But the service itself, doing the landscaping, that doesn't get transferred to the customer. It's just the outcome, that is left with the customer. And so again, because of that, the customer has to be much more involved in that process. I talked about, a consultative type of a process between the service provider and the customer. Time is more important and delays are more challenging. Just an example, my neighbor just 2 doors down, she contracted to have windows replaced in June, and the installer put in their order, and there was delays. They landed up putting the windows in November in bad weather, and then had to stop the operation and then complete it just this 2 weeks ago when the weather started getting a little better again. So there's all these things that come into play when you're working with the service. So the main thing to remember is that on goods, it's tangible. On services, it's intangible, and it's up to the service provider to manage expectations to make sure at the end of the day, marketing is perception, that the customer is satisfied regardless of what kind of hurdles that the service provider had to go through. And again, in service provision, it's the recovery that's more important than making the mistake or having the challenge. And the better that a service provider can do recovery, the more satisfied and possibly loyal that customer is. So I'll leave it at that piece. Okay, this slide here, I just wanted to make the emphasis of, this is a timeline, of goods versus services in the Canadian economy. So you look in the 50s, services was a small part of the actual goods that were provided, right? And now take a look now in the year 2000s, you can see that the service component of the Canadian economy is much, much greater. And so that, take that into consideration when you're looking for a career. That the service component, we are a service economy in Canada, and we export services as well. And our manufacturing piece has kind of shrunk, but there's a new invigoration going on, and I'm going to talk about the next generation manufacturing on a slide that's at the end of this presentation to make you aware that there's a nonprofit called NGen that's really looking at next future future manufacturing using artificial intelligence and robotics and all those additional progressive technologies. And they're getting the community colleges across Canada involved. And there's a note where you can actually subscribe to their newsletter to find out what's going on and what training is available through the community colleges that are partners, and then where the technology is being developed in Canada. So it is coming. So I wanted to, I'll zoom through those slides, near the end here to tell you where that is. But our main objective today is to get you through 5A and 5B, the participation activities. And again, it's all about calculating what productivity is and how do you do that. So one of the best tools is to map out, what your process looks like based on your inputs and your outputs. And so that a standard productivity formula is, what did you output and then what did you input and what's the ratio of output to input based on certain units. And that's why I'm asking you to identify the units in these calculations, on every calculation that you do in these participation activities, and also in the cupcake, the group cupcake assignment, right? So that's the start. And again, this is right out of your topic 5 slide deck. What transformation are you making in terms of creating value? And in our case, well, I'll give you the answer. You're making a gingerbread house, so it's physical. You're making something, you're manufacturing something. So that's the value. And that value is, yes, you're producing something that is being made for the customer, which is fantastic. And also you can take a look at that transformation in terms of, dollar value. For whatever input in dollar value you put in, you get a certain amount of dollar value coming out. And that ratio gives you a ratio of your productivity. Okay, and there's different ones. So physical, locational, it's not rocket science to know that if you have a warehouse and you want to build a warehouse and your customers are living in Calgary, well, basically you build that warehouse in Calgary because one, it'll be cheaper to get your products or services to those customers. And secondly, you'll be more responsive, and that all adds to your productivity, which adds to your competitive advantage, which adds to your profitability of your company. Again, so exchange is broadened now. Before it was just bricks and mortar, retail, where the customer would go into a store and lo and behold, the product was there. They'd buy it and there'd be a transfer of dollars for the product. And in today's world, well, everybody's going to Alibaba and Amazon and Temu and Wayfair. And that's access through the internet. It's still an exchange, right? And then there's physiological transformations. So healthcare. So you go to an optometrist. You get an analysis. You get a good pair of glasses, and now the transformation is you can see much better. So that's a physiological transformation. Psychological. Well, you go listen to a comedian and entertainment wide, and all these endorphins start coming out because you're laughing and you come out of there feeling really good. Your mind has changed. So that's psychological and an informative. Well, we're doing that right now. I'm providing you knowledge and some skills and also some experience of my previous experience. So that's an informative transformation, and I hope that you take what I'm providing, and I would hope that you would get a lot of value out of that, and that will work for you in your in your career life cycle. Okay, so here again, this is highlighted. So value added, to understand what that is, and you can see that there's a few things bolded under these highlights. So, so pay attention to that. So price is based on perceived value, right? So again, from a service point of view, there's a certain amount of positioning, when you're providing that service to get the customer to really perceive that they're getting this tremendous value, from your service. And again, brand is a big deal on products, and the the stronger the brand, the more perceived value that the customer has when they're purchasing that particular product, based on the brand. So value added is created in different ways. I mentioned brand, I mentioned functionality of the product. If the product is more efficient in running, or it helps a buyer save costs in their own business, well, you've added a lot of value. And manufacturing and service organizations, they transfer inputs to into outputs and add value for the customer. And again, different units. All right, it could be just an actual production value of numbers, or it could be an actual perceived value of some people buy a Lexus not only because it's a good running car, but then it shows people that, hey, I've arrived, I'm successful because I'm driving a Lexus. So they're selling ego, and they're selling status as well as a great built car. So those are the kind of things that come into play in this here, right? And then here's some more information, and again, adding value to a product or service helps companies attract more customers, which can boost revenues and profits. So you add more functionality into a particular product, all of a sudden the customer sees this additional value. For instance, when you take a look at GPS systems that were sold individually by TomTom and others, lo and behold, now there's a smartphone that gives you GPS capability at no extra charge, so to speak. So that's value, added value that will attract more customers because of more functionality, and there's other attributes around adding value as well. Okay, so here's the big drawing that you need to go through, but here's where I'm trying to give you these helpful hints, hopefully, and I want you to understand that you add value as a person. So we are all corporations, right? We all have a personal brand. We all market ourselves. We all have skills and capabilities that add value to what we're doing. And I think once you start recognizing that, you'll have a different approach to a career. You'll have a different approach to what you're doing in society. And so this article, here's the link. You can go there. It'll talk about why you should define your value proposition. What is it of value that you're selling, or you're providing, for your client? Your client may be your company. Your client may be your company's customers. Your client may be the government department you're working for. What's your value proposition there? How can you showcase your expertise? How could you build your network so that you're more capable and you can bring extra capability to the workbench, so to speak? And how to be authentic and consistent so that you can be a trusted authority, and then how to get feedback and improvement, improve what you're doing. And then there was a few other things in that article. So I'd like you to have a look at that. It's a short read. It's just a few minutes, but it might change your insights about where you want to take your career and how you want to manage the next 30 years, say, of your working career. Okay, so let's just get into the actual process flow chart. So here's the 100,000 foot level, the high level view of what's going on. The whole key is that you provide inputs to a process or a capability, and then that gives you outputs. And how you measure productivity is the amount of output that you get for the input that you put in. And on the top side, well, what resources and skills and knowledge do you bring to that, that machine that produces the output, regardless of what that is? And then how do you manage that, right? And here's where management principles really come in, to working these functions and leveraging them to the fact where you get an optimum outcome and you're successful. So those controls, are instructions, procedures, metrics, governance, all part of that onion that I talked about. Okay, and then again, the divisions of labor, which is key. And right here is another slide right out of your your slide deck in topic 5, understand the definition, breaking up a production process into small tasks so that each worker performs a small portion of the overall job. This is all part of specialization. It's all part of comparative advantage that works, that makes trading, what it is today. And also, let's just go back to this little drawing I put in here. So that means then, you might look at, and you can't read this, but this particular activity, it might be a little more complex. So you say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should break this down into 3 steps. And that way we could simplify the operations, and each of those 3 steps can be done more effectively, more efficiently, and much better than trying to do this in one lump sum. And that's what division of labor is all about, a separation of work process in a number of tasks. Okay, so that's that part. The next thing to understand, again, you see the highlighting and process flow diagram. It shows when decisions are made. So you can build in the decision process into these steps to be able to direct your labor force to make the right decisions, to do the right things right. And again, I'm going to want you to use these types of boxes to be able to represent what's going on. These diamonds are decision boxes and going through. So now we're getting right to the, a 3-step approach to completing participation 5A and 5B. 1, identify the transformations you're addressing to build and sell your gingerbread house. That's what you're building. Identify your inputs, identify your outputs, and identify the value add. So what are you doing in terms of a gingerbread house? What's the value add? Well, it's something that maybe somebody didn't want to build on their own. So it's putting together, a decorative piece of something you can eat. All right, and you use your imagination and your creativity to be able to identify these things. Then you're going to map this process of step through, and then based on your map process to build and sell your gingerbread house, you're gonna make assumptions to complete 5B. And 5B is all about calculate labor productivity. And there's 2 types of approaches here that we're going to ask you to calculate. Units of output per labor minute, value of output per value of labor, and then we're going to ask you to calculate material productivity, value of output per value of materials. And these are, labor is a partial productivity equation. Normally you put them all together in terms of total productivity, where you'd put labor and material and the amount of energy that you use and whatever. So I'll have a slide to show you that just later on, but that's where we're starting. So what I ask you to do again is, go to the video and watch this video on in topic 5, and there's the link. You can go right from this slide. And if you link onto that, the second one is to download the group team cupcake assignment to see how relevant this are and how doing a good job in 5A and 5B will help you be successful. Now to do 5A and 5B, here's the parameters to use. Okay, so you've consulted with your customers, so you have a decision diamond there somewhere, right? You've decided to charge $3 for your gingerbread house, so that's the output value, and why? Because your customers for this particular gingerbread house, they're price conscious. They're looking for a very basic type of gingerbread house. And then I've limited the inputs, all right, in terms of ingredients to 3-gram wafer crackers at a cost of 10 cents each, and 1 jujube. Didn't even include the icing to put this all together, so don't worry about it. And then it only take 1 worker to build this gingerbread house, and it'll take 2 minutes of labor time at a labor rate of 33 cents a minute, right? So that's what you're going to use to be able to calculate your productivity formulas in 5B. And then, identify that transformation that you're addressing. And again, your inputs are direct labor components, so that I want you to, kind of placeholder that concept, because in your assignments, you're going to be looking, in your cupcake assignment, you're going to be looking at direct labor cost and direct sales labor cost. and there's some explanations in there that you need to understand. All right, so you determine both the sequential steps and the simultaneous or concurrent activities to build and sell your gingerbread house. So what's a concurrent activity? I'm showing you this in the next slide here, is that you see these three activities, they are concurrent with these two activities. So that's how you would build concurrent activities, right? Going through. All right, so you create a process flow chart with all these little boxes here. Use every one of them, all right? And how to get ready for that is you identify your inputs, you identify your outputs, you identify the value add in building this, three cracker gingerbread house, and then identify the type of transformation, and then you're away to the races. So here's a little bit more of a complicated process flow chart. So I guess, you're going to say, well, how complicated should I build mine? Well, less than this and more than that. That's all I can tell you. So you're going to have to use your creativity, keep it fairly simple, but yet cover off all the requirements that I asked you to meet. Okay, so now we're into 5B. So again, show your formulas, identify your units, show your calculations. And again, this will prepare you for your team for the group cupcake assignments. Again, here's the parameters to use in these calculations. And these are the two types of labor productivity calculations I want you to make. And here's one of them I want you to make. Now, I thought maybe, okay, is that a little complicated? All right, so let's take a look at another example. So I created my own example. And I created it's a little more sophisticated of a gingerbread house. So I'm saying, yeah, I'm going to charge $6 each, and yeah, there's going to be a few more ingredients in this $6 unit, and it's going to be a total of $1.50. And the labor to build each of those $6 gingerbread houses will be 3 minutes of labor, one worker, and paid at 25 cents per minute, which is roughly 15 cents an hour. So what to do if you're still confused, right? See, units of output per labor minute. Look at units of output per labor minute. So we know that's the first one. This is how you calculate it. This one is based on this example. Now you figure it out, for this example, right? And then there's a few other ones that are in here that you can go through. And it's not just, it's the statement after. Take a look at the way that's said. So labor productivity here in terms of unit of output per labor hour. Well, one gingerbread takes 0.05 hours, 3 divided by 60. And so that you can see that in 1 hour then, so you divide this by 0.05, in 1 hour, a worker can create 20 gingerbread houses. So 20 gingerbread houses per labor hour. So that's how how you get there. And then here's two examples, so you can see how that gets done and then relate that into what you're doing. But I wanted you to, expand your thinking around productivity, and especially in our day and age, where we're going with climate change and sustainability. I want you to start thinking like a good ancestor, and so we got to really think, triple bottom line wise. So, the first one, which we just discussed, talked about, is profit. It's the total measure of productivity would be, all the outputs divided by the input. So if you looked at this from an economy point of view, this would be the total gross domestic product over the inputs of machine, labor, materials, and energy. And we'd see that. But then we want different measures in our next few generations to be able to, materialize or realize the triple bottom line. So if we look at that from a people aspect, so we would look at a measure of productivity, a total measure of productivity for people at, GDP divided by quality of life index. And that would be a certain ratio. And you could compare that. And if you go to Dr. Google, you could take a look at, a quality of life index by country. And I'm sure Norway would be top of the list. And Canada would run maybe 10 to 15 under there in terms of order. So there's, the onus is on you to kind of try to, push, different measurements out to take a look at being a good ancestor. And then from a planet point of view, you would look at, the GDP, again, output, goods and services, over the overall carbon footprint it took to create those. and then you'd want to reduce that ratio, right? Increase that ratio as much as you can, because you want this to come as small as you possibly can, which would make this number much larger. So those are that's the effect of this thing. Now I just wanted to show you an alternative. Here's some work I did for MacHall Mobility. It was three stores that made up this company, and intuitively they were doing all the right things. But I spent one afternoon with representatives from all three stores, and I said, okay, tell me what you do, and I will put that in the order of a process. And how does that, and this in total quality management, they call these swim lanes, all right? So they're basically, they're functional lanes, and you can see how, the process was done, and then all of a sudden, the management had a piece of document that they could use to orient new employees. They had a piece of document that they could use to get improvements on that process, so that it just worked out to be really well. It was really well received, and they're still using it today. Okay, so one other thing is that I want you to realize that, hey, based on the service profit chain, based on operational functions, how can you be better at that? Well, understand the sales process. When someone buys something, they become aware of it, they consider buying it, they actually buy it, they purchase it, and then maybe sometimes it needs some servicing, and then after the service comes, the loyalty. If you've done a good job, the product is good and the service is good, you get into loyalty. But the whole idea is to understand that these customers are on their journey, in this purchasing process, and you have to be where they are. You have to find their communities. So this is a mixture of, conventional access to them, radio and TV, to, down into, your website and social media and third parties. So understand this piece, and you'll be a lot better off in terms of connecting with your customer and getting information from them to be able to, manage, from management principles point of view, to leverage, your overall functions, to be able to, make more profit, be a better ancestor, to be able to be more successful in your area. Okay, so we covered these pieces. Here's right out of, again, your topic slide deck of 70 slides. This is pretty self-explanatory on what it means for total measure of productivity. It gives you the example. And now these are highlighted. This is information that I brought into because it's not obvious in your overall topic slide deck. So take heed to what's in here, and especially in the bolded areas, and then to understand what multi-factor productivity is, and then understand that changes in multi-factor productivity reflects the effects of changes in management practices. So there's the connection. There's the connection between management principles and operations to be able to be more successful in achieving the vision of your organization. I talked about partial productivity. So that's one class of inputs. So, in your participation B, you're looking at one class of input in terms of just direct labor of production, and then the other one, direct cost of materials, right? So that's where that is. This is again right out of the topics, and wanted you to, this topic 5 kind of introduces you more to emerging technologies. I mean, this is your challenge. This is your next, 20 years of what you're going to be up against in terms of robotics and machine learning and artificial intelligence, virtual reality, which will have a big impact on service, because virtual reality now, takes out some of the intangibles of the service. For example, you'll be able to, you go to an optometrist, and if you take off your glasses and you put on another pair of frames, you can't see what you look like. Well, they take a picture of you, and now you can see what you'll look like in every frame, in terms of virtual reality, those kind of things. this is just the introduction to, what to expect, when you're getting out there. And again, this piece here shows you what level of automation to use. And this is a 2x2 matrix, so you can see if there's low variety and a lot of output. Well, then you'd look at a fixed automation configuration. So if you're refining gasoline, I mean, it's a very low variety. You're making one type of gasoline and you're making a lot of it. So you're on this side of the arrangement, which means that you can increase your productive capacity by doing that. On the other side of the continuum, if you need to customize and you got to be really flexible, well, then you're pretty well using standard and conventional machinery because you're really down to almost artisans doing a batch operation, a one of kind of thing. So understand that that range and how that shifts. Like you hear something in the middle, like flexible manufacturing system. That's where you're using maybe a computer managed operation. I think I have an example of this. So I'll show you. I did some work for, whoops, where are we here? Yeah, I did some work for a particular manufacturing shop, and they had, a stamping machine like this. And so what they would do, all they would have to do is to get a different plate out with different, holes in it or whatever, was to reprogram the machine, and lo and behold, you produce a new plate. The margins on the output were incredible because this was automatic and it was programmed for each type of product. The margins were 2 and 3 times the cost. That's unheard of. Normally industry works to a 30% margin, so that's really good. This is just the introduction to NGen. Have you read this? They bring advanced manufacturing and technology to drive digital transformation. So it's Canada's way. It's a nonprofit. NGen's a nonprofit to be able to bring new technology into Canada and get people involved and up our ante in global trading. In highly technical manufactured goods. And here, you just go to their website, sign up for their newsletter, and you'll be aware of what kind of training is available from the partners of NGen. And there's many community colleges across Canada that are partners, and it's just a great resource. Then what I did was, apart from what we've taken already in terms of management theories and theorists in topics 1 to 4, I compiled the slides out of the main slide deck in topic 5 to help you, in part, to do your individual assignment that's due on the 16th. The manager style self-determinations project that you're going to write, and you can see, the fact that where you need to use this information, it's all bolded for you. You're going to use your self-assessments on Pearson. You're going to use what we learned in class or webinar and in the theory discussions. But, in question 2, whose view of decision making are you taking? Why do you subscribe to that? Whose theories of management decision making are effective? So you need a pull from these people. So it puts it all together to get an idea of who you are, what your strengths are, and what your skills are, and your approach to it, and how that maps to particular theorists and what they subscribe to and what they've contributed to, and describe why that is the case, and that'll get you really good marks in that particular project assignment. Okay, so that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, you can email me, and we'll go from there. And then I will see you at the next webinar in week 6. Because week 5 is where you're going to be doing your test. Okay, take care. All right, bye now.